So let's get started. I think we have a good number here already. We would love to welcome everybody to today's Women Who Empower event, Women's Workforce Empowerment. United, we learn. Thank you for joining us today for what we know will be a very engaging topical conversation. To kick off the event, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Maylan Nawin. Maylan is the Senior Vice President of Human Resources for North America Operations at Schneider Electric. She's been recognized at Schneider and among many HR groups for her visionary transformation of the organization's people strategy. Maylan is passionate about caring for the hearts and minds of employees and empowering women in the workplace. Welcome, Maylan.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you very much for this very warm welcome and those very kind words. It's very much an immense pleasure to be here today to moderate this amazing panel with our panelists who are here with us today to share their view on a gender equal, gender reality, especially as we officially close Women's History Month, and we are all very much nurtured and energized. I don't know for you, but at least for me, about the hashtag Break the Bias and how we can all work towards a more gender inclusive world. So our panelists for today are Dr. Bethany Edmonds, who is the Director of the Computer Science and Teaching Professor at the Northeastern Vancouver campus. And as of today, she's also the President of Women in Machine Learning. We also have Summer Harris, who is a computer science student, also at the Vancouver campus. Summer is a student and ambassador and is currently on a software developer co-op with a real estate firm in British Columbia. And last but not least, we have Elisa, who is the CEO and Dean of Northeastern Toronto campus. So it's really an honor to be here and to moderate this panel of very accomplished women. So let's jump right in to the question, and hopefully the conversation is sparking great insights for you and in the audience. Feel free to use the chat to ask any questions. If time allows, we'll be more than happy to get some of those at the end of the call. So to begin with, I'd like for our panelists to introduce themselves maybe in a couple of minutes. What are their current roles, and share a brief overview of their career path. Bethany, can you start?
Sure, thank you so much, and I'm really happy to be here. So I'm Bethany Edmonds, you kind of said. So I had always wanted to be a teacher. I started my undergrad as a teaching elementary education, and I was in New Jersey, so I'm actually American. And so I found out I had to take a secondary major, and I had always wanted to be like my brother, who was a computer scientist. So I took some computer science courses, and then I found out I loved computer science. So I was switched to be computer science, went and I did some programming, and then realized I just really love teaching. And so I went back for my PhD to become a professor. So I've been doing some teaching. I loved it, but then I work hard, I guess. I'm never happy with what I'm doing. So I kept trying to improve my programs. And so I became program head and then associate dean at BCIT. And then I had the opportunity, Northeastern came to Vancouver, which was fantastic. And they started up a campus, and I had the opportunity to build the campus from scratch. So I came over to Northeastern, I guess 3 years ago now, started as the associate dean and only faculty member, built up the Align program here. And so now I'm the director of computer science.
That's really amazing. Congratulations on such a journey, and congratulations on being now the president of the Women in Machine Learning. That's really inspiring. What about you, Summer?
Yeah, thanks so much. My name is Summer, and I am currently an Align student at Northeastern Vancouver, and I'm on co-op right now, so working, doing software development for a real estate company. And my background, it is kind of a liberal arts background. So I did undergrad at Quest University Canada up in Squamish, and I studied public health and literature and took just a lot of writing courses. I took very few math courses in undergrad, actually. And after I graduated, I worked a couple of different jobs having to do with public health or the arts. Eventually ended up as an admissions counselor at Quest. And yeah, then after a bit of soul searching, I realized there was this huge part of my being that I loved doing technical problem solving, and hadn't really created that opportunity for myself yet in my professional career. So I made the switch into computer science, and luckily I was able to find the Align program, which was actually exactly what I was looking for, this opportunity to change tracks later in life. And yeah, now I found myself here at the program, and I'm looking forward to where it's going to take me.
That's exciting. Congratulations as well to you too. Elisa, what about you? Tell us about, how you came up to become that CEO Dean of the Toronto campus.
Thank you, Maylan, and thank you, Adrian. I also want to thank the entire Women Who Empower team for organizing these great events, and especially for thinking about a Canadian event. That's really special to me. And so thank you all of you as well for taking the time to join today. So my name is Elisa. I'm the CEO and Regional Dean of our Toronto campus. I too have come up from a STEM background. I have a degree in mathematics from the University of Waterloo. I started my career selling and structuring fixed income swaps and derivatives on the trading floor. And I spent a number of years in capital markets. And then I would say sort of the second industry I entered into is tech. I spent a number of years in tech working for Canada's largest tech incubator. And then through just circumstance and a little bit of serendipity, I ended up here at Northeastern. And like Bethany, when I started, the campus was very small. We had a handful of students, and I'm, really proud and delighted with, we have a large team behind us. We have great support from Northeastern. We now have over 1,000 students. We have 60 faculty members, and we have a very large and thriving campus in Toronto. So we're very proud of our growth and very excited to be here.
Yeah, that's impressive. By the way, following up on that first answer of yours, what changes have you seen in higher education in terms of women's advancement?
Yeah, I think for me, from a personal perspective, higher education has been the key that's unlocked every single door for me in my life. I was the first in my family to get a higher education. I'm really proud of what we're doing for our students and for the community. I think for me, higher education gets you in the game. It levels the playing field. It allows you to grow in your career. It allows you to reemerge or reimagine. And, I'm a true believer that good ideas don't come from one gender. Good ideas, they come from everywhere. And, given where the world is today, we have very, very big and very challenging issues in front of us. And we cannot have 50% of the population solving problems for 100% of the population in the world. So we need everyone at the table, men and women, all at the table. And that includes, it includes men and women. It includes people of color. It means all sexual orientations. It means we need diversity of thought. It means we need cultural diversity. And I think, when it comes to organizations, intention is not the same as impact. And I'm really proud to work for an organization that is focused on both intention and also impact. So when I think about higher education and what we're doing at Northeastern, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is at the core of what we do and what we believe here. The research says that in order to really make progress, it's not about debiasing individuals. It's actually about debiasing organizations across all processes. And so here at Northeastern, DEI is part of our strategic priorities and imperatives, whether that relates to students, to prospects, to the community, to faculty, to partners, to staff. We have a commitment to increase representation and diversity at all levels, where all our campuses are. And that's built into our strategic plans, that's built into our academic plans, and we're measuring it and we're taking action. And in terms of what we're doing specifically, in terms of our campus in Toronto, in terms of women, we've done a lot. We've created spaces, we've created conversations. we have this great platform around Women Who Empower, which is fantastic. It's a shining example, and credit goes to Diane McGivery and her team for making that happen. In Toronto, we have scholarships for women. We have a diversity lens into all our hiring practices. Very specifically, when I look at my leadership team, it's more than 50% female. When I look at the academic colleges and the deans across Northeastern, again, that's more than 50% women. When I look at the regional campus deans, my peers, again, more than 50% women. And so these are wonderful, wonderful things that we can celebrate, and we've made very good progress. But I will also say the work is not over, and we have to keep striving, because that change needs to happen internally within the organization. But we also have to recognize that when our students, and our female students specifically, are graduating, they're entering the workforce, and we need to prepare them, and we need to continue to push for change, both internally within higher education and in the workforce at large.
Yeah, I love what you say. It resonates so much, right? You have to really work both streams, the representation part and the organization as a whole and the processes. So clearly, I completely agree with you, and it's impressive to see that, the top is already quite balanced, right? And that's the first thing for people as well, to believe that you're serious about it. It's to actually show it in reality, like look at the top and see how it looks like. I would like to ask you, Bethany, now, if are there any stereotypes that exist when it comes to women in your experiences, and how do you build your personal brand to not to overcome those, but in general, like, how do you build your equity?
I think this is, obviously there are stereotypes, right? That's not, I don't think that's even a question. The thing is, how do you go about them and not play into them? I think it's been really hard doing the intersection of tech and academia, because the needs are so different. The differentiation. So one of the things that's really fascinating to me is when I first started with women in machine learning, I guess probably 15, 17 years ago now, it was really fascinating to see the other co-organizer and myself were more feminine, right? So we would wear lots of makeup, not lots of makeup, but makeup, and just dress professionally and in a way that was maybe not typical of tech. And the assumptions were, well, if you dress that way, then you're not technical. And so that was really, and meanwhile, like, my mother raised me to be like, this is what professional is, and this is the way that you get ahead is by looking like this, kind of banker style, because that was her industry. But right, and that fits more with academic leadership. And so I've been in several situations where, let's say I was working with a board of governors, and I'd be helping moderate the meeting, and they assume I'm part of the help because I'm dressed in a certain way, and they assumed I don't have a PhD in machine learning, right? And so it's been really hard for me to be true to myself, but still present in a way that doesn't get me dismissed right away. It's been really tricky, but I think what I often do is I say, okay, here are the things that I'm willing to give up, or the ways that I'm willing to show myself, so that I can be aware of the stereotypes and break through them as best I can. And I think it's important to, now that I'm a little bit more established, I stopped wearing makeup, because I feel like while that helped me get where I was, that's not appropriate necessarily. So I still care about my looks, but recognize, like, what am I putting forward for other people that are coming in? And what stereotypes am I actually perpetuating, which is a bit unfortunate. So trying to, where I can, recognize and push back a little bit.
Well, thanks for sharing those real life examples and for being so transparent with us. It's always it's true example, and those type of real situation that you really understand how can you be truly yourself, but as well, how can you be mindful of what's the bias here, and how do you go about that? So thank you very much. According to the American Association of University Women, only 21% of engineering majors and 19% of computer science majors are women. So Summer, that question is for you, as you are pursuing a STEM education. you're breaking the mold. You're part of those women that are building the future. And my question to you is, why did you choose this educational and professional path? And what are your goals?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. A couple of thoughts come to mind. The first one is actually that the way that I was taught at a very young age, I think has really impacted my ability to change paths into computer science. I'm lucky. When I was a small child, I had lots of opportunities to have really authentic mathematical experiences. So cooking with my parents and doing the fractions of, how much of whatever we were putting in, whether we were doubling the recipe or tripling the recipe, having the recipe. And then in school as well, there were these opportunities that my teachers created for me to see how math and science applied to everyday life. And even, in middle school and high school, I did like math club after school. And that experience for me, it was actually mostly girls who were in many of those clubs that I was in. So I feel really grateful and just lucky that the environment that I grew up was, I think, very supportive to me as a girl who had a interest and inclination toward math and science. And then I think as an adult, one of the pieces that's made a really big difference for me in feeling empowered to come into STEM was to have that opportunity after undergrad to make that switch into the sciences. Because in undergrad, I was doing so much exploring. I was discovering who I could be as a writer, I was learning about public health and just reading all of these great books and pieces of literature. And I'm grateful for that opportunity. And I did have this really strong feeling after undergrad that I had somehow missed the boat, or, I didn't major in computer science or math in undergrad. So how could I possibly veer into that for a master's? And I'm really grateful for the Align program and for organizations like Northeastern and people like Bethany who are able to support these opportunities for people to switch into computer science at any point in their life. Because I do think a lot of allowing people to step into that just has to do with the way that it's taught and the narratives that we have around it, and mentors taking the time to hold space for people to rewrite their narratives. I was really lucky to have great faculty at Northeastern, and even the admissions officers who worked at Northeastern, were able in those initial conversations with me to help me understand where were the stories that I was holding about whether or not I could make that shift into STEM, and how could I differentiate that from my own pure potential. So I'm just so grateful to have those opportunities and those people along the way that were great touch points for me in rewriting my narratives. And at this point, my career goals are just to keep exploring and to learn more about computer science. And there's definitely some arenas within computer science that I want to get more experience. It's a vast field, and I just want to keep playing around for a little bit. And I love learning. I would identify as a lifelong learner. So I'm excited to jump into some of those arenas of computer science that I haven't had as much experience in yet. And then just along the way, trying to be aware of where are the opportunities for me now to be able to hold those spaces that were held for me, for people to be rewriting their narratives. So. Yeah, thanks so
Well,
much for the question.
no, thank you very much. Like, I would only say that learning is the way to grow, that what we say in corporation. So we're definitely looking for people who are always learning. I think support and strength is essential when we're discussing about empowering women, Summer, and it's great to see that you've had that support system for a long time, because it gives you strength and confidence to meet your goals. So congratulations to you. And co-oping, like, we have a certain amount of co-op at Schneider, and I think it's personally a great way to actually keep studying, but at the same time applying your knowledge in a real life environment. So you learn, and companies get a lot out of co-ops because you have such a fresh perspective that you bring to the table. So speaking of strength, Elisa, sorry, I want to call you Elijah. I don't know why, but I'm sorry for that. I'd like to direct you my next question, which is about, whether or not you could tell us about an experience where your gender was considered a strength, and what did your own experience as a woman do to shape that? Can you share one example or one experience?
Sure. Thank you, Maylan. When I mentioned earlier that my career has spanned 3 industries, 2 of those in particular, capital markets and technology, are very, very male dominated. And I remember my very first job on the trading floor, I was the only woman and the only woman of color. And sadly, I just kind of got used to that. I think not seeing people who look like me, I felt like I think a little bit like what Bethany said, I felt like I just had to fit into this binary stereotype of this is what a man looks like, this is how a man behaves, this is what a woman looks like, this is how a woman behaves. And back then, over 15 years ago, we weren't really having conversations like this. There was no such thing as allies. There were no big platforms around this, and it was really hard, and it was really, really lonely. And what did I do? I went to the default. I put my head down and I did my work and I tried to blend in. And of course, obviously, it's impossible to blend in. You just can't. It doesn't work. And I think, why is that? I think for generations, women were sort of just having to try to fit in to be like men. And I think through that, we kind of lost a little bit of ourselves, and we lost a little bit of those unique qualities that we bring to the table. And I think, in the 2008 financial crisis, you saw a lot of that. It was actually women who stepped up and said, let's look at risk differently. Let's look at complexity differently. And now you're seeing that women actually saved some of these firms or have some of these conversations. And so, looking back, very honestly, I don't think I was using my strengths or my unique attributes to my advantage at all. And, now that more time has gone, now that I've gained more confidence, we're having more conversations like this, companies are starting to, break these systemic changes, and differences are being recognized and celebrated. I think I've become more resilient and more confident, but I've also started to think about what are the unique strengths that I'm bringing to the table. Things like having a unique voice and perspective, managing differently, leading differently, being confident to bring creative solutions, bringing out of the box thinking and leadership, challenging the status quo. These are real things. And now, I'm using these qualities and these attributes every day in my job to lead. But also, I think more importantly, I'm very privileged now to be in a position of power. And so I use them to empower others. And I think that's what drives me. It's using that platform to empower others, men and women, but women specifically from all walks of life and from all intersectionalities, to really think about what is that unique power that you bring to the table, and how do you use that to elevate others and to really drive towards positive progress.
Yeah. Well, that's so on point. I love that you're using now the position you're in to change and to influence and to maybe empower others to do things that you couldn't do at the time, right? Because I agree with you, we were not having this conversation 10 years ago. So that's absolutely amazing. I do have a question for the 3 of you, and maybe we can start with you, Bethany, which is, if you look down to you when you were a young girl, like 13-year-old, like, about starting to your dreams, what would you tell yourself? Like, what would be the advice you would give yourself?
I mean, 13 is hard, right? I don't think, I think much to Elisa's point, like it's when you're 13, being different is just painful. And you think like, well, why am I not like these other people? And why, and especially, I remember I tried really hard not to stick out and not to be different in any way. And when I couldn't, or when I realized that I was thinking differently, I saw it as something wrong. And I think as I've gone through, I've realized that throughout my PhD, throughout my experience in leadership, actually those different thoughts are really powerful. To be able to have that different perspective, to be able to understand things differently. If you see something other people don't, it's not that you're doing it wrong. It's not that you don't know something that they know. It's actually that you have a different perspective. And especially when you're surrounded by people that aren't like you, you feel like it's a detriment. And you tend to think, well, I'm missing something. And I think having more confidence in myself and saying, actually, it's great to be different. It's really important that you see things and to speak up when you see these things, because maybe you just have a different insight. It's not a negative, but instead thinking about that and almost leaning into it more, because you have this power that other people don't. I think I'd go back and I can only imagine how quirky I would have ended up. But I think it's a really important message, because especially a lot of the boardrooms I go into are very homogeneous, and they're hurt because of it. So really being able to have people see their different perspectives, and that's why I love some of the classes that we're able to have with students of different backgrounds, because the conversations are just that much richer. The solutions are that much better, because you're able to have a safe space for people of different backgrounds to speak up and say, I see this or I see that. And then it is that risk mitigation and just better success.
Yeah. What about you, Elisa?
So when I was 13 years old, I'll say two things. The first thing I would say is I really love what Summer said around rewriting your narrative. We take ourselves so seriously. Now kids younger and younger, they're saying, I need to achieve this and this and this. I need to be on this linear path. But do you know what? Life isn't like that. Life is up and down and sideways and backwards and forwards. And I think when you're 13 and when you're growing up in this high pressure environment and, in private school or in public school and SATs and all of these, different things, there's a lot of pressure. And so just know that life isn't linear, right? I did never in a million years thought I would be a dean and CEO of a campus. Never, ever, ever. And so it's never too late to rewrite your narrative and chart your own path and forge your own path. Be an entrepreneur, think about things differently, take a pivot. So just know that flexibility is going to be part of your future. And the other thing I would say is just go explore and be curious and ask questions. That's something the president of Northeastern, Joseph Owen, says all the time. It's go hang around people who are not like you. Go out of your comfort zone. Be in the world, right? The world is a fun and interesting place. Go and discover it. And that is one thing I wish I had done more of when I was 13 years old.
Yeah, that's I love it. I love it. Be adventurous, and the flexibility and intentional flexibility of that is very important. So Summer, what would you say to your younger self?
Yeah, both of the answers so far have been great. I'm trying to think of something different. So I grew up in a very small community. There were 100 people that I was in the same year as, kindergarten through 12th grade. And as a 13-year-old, I was very socially afraid of stepping outside of my group of friends that I felt very safe within. And I think one of my regrets as an adult is that, I was afraid of some of my peers at 13, and I don't think I needed to be. I think in some respects it kept me safe, but also in some respects there's this really great opportunity to stretch out more into the community that I was in. And I'm just kind of curious, like what would have happened if I had, been willing to show up as my really nerdy self, like in authentic relationship with the other students that I was going to school with. And I'm just kind of curious about that. And I think that ties back to being willing to think differently, being willing to think differently out loud where other people can hear it. And then I think there's also this piece about being willing to dream really big and move toward that without putting so much pressure on whether or not the final goal is achieved. I think I dreamed really, really big as a 13-year-old and was a little bit afraid and shut down some of my own thoughts or dreams for the world because I didn't think that they were possible. And now I'm starting to see more and more that the way we get to those things we think might be impossible is to actually entertain them as being possible and say, okay, so if this is possible, how do we get there? And I think that those are the two pieces that I would say is just that the world is a safe place to go out and play and meet other people and show up authentically as myself, and then also to dream big and follow that and just see where it goes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. As I listen to you, I take away that for someone like me who works in a big corporation, my job is to make sure that we create those inclusive and psychologically safe environment where people feel they can really dream big, and then they have the opportunity, the tool, the resources to actually solve big problems for the world. So it's very important, and I take that away with me as we will close the call, as one of my very important duty to do back in my company. Bethany, you also said something that was quite insightful. Different thoughts, different perspectives are really powerful. How can women in position of power and privilege uplift and be ally to those who are just starting their career or their path? And how can we ensure that they know that their ideas are valued?
I'm trying to unmute. I think it's important to know what holds us back, right? And some of that's remembering our own experiences, but also empathy for those that so I'm a white woman, so I understand that I have had privilege coming through the program and opportunities that others haven't had. And I've had the opportunity to work with individuals like our CEO and Dean at the Vancouver campus who did, say, I think you have leadership qualities and I think you can do this. And when I didn't necessarily believe in myself, and I think passing that on and really seeing what, women don't often tend to brag about what they can do or over exaggerate with their skills. And so I think it's important to be able to see and nourish and understand if somebody doesn't want to take that opportunity, but really believing in them. Heather had said in the comments that, I've been lucky to work with Summer. She is one of our students. And so I am very proud. And we've had some conversations of you should definitely do this and you can totally do this. So I think it's recognizing that that as people come up underneath or in different ways as you experience and meet with people, it's really letting them know what you see. Sometimes we're so worried about our own perception that we forget to tell others, like, I'm really proud of you, or that's amazing that you're able to do that, and being able to just realize that somebody might not see that. And so it doesn't hurt to point out when somebody does a great job, or when they have a skill that they maybe didn't recognize they did such a great job, and just encouraging others when I think it's one of the things that women do tend to do, support others and just recognizing it doesn't take away from you to build somebody else up and to just give them the support, either privately or a lot of times in a meeting. It's also very important knowing that in a meeting, women do tend to be dismissed and our ideas tend to be overlooked, or we don't I don't have this problem, but a lot of people have problems speaking up. I tend to overtalk, but using that to let others, when I see that they want to speak, giving my space to them, because I don't have that hesitation. So I think really recognizing the small barriers or big barriers that are coming into play, and seeing if there are ways that you can reduce them to help others come in and have a voice at the place that you're lucky enough to be.
Yeah. Elisa, I know you know, in your position as well, maybe, you know, you have a few thoughts around allyship and what, you know, what personally you do as well to support that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're witnessing a beautiful example of mentoring and sponsorship, looking at Summer and Bethany. I mean, it's so wonderful and beautiful to see this. So, I mean, here's the thing. If you're in a leadership position, it is your responsibility to mentor and sponsor someone. And it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, that is your responsibility. And I firmly believe that. And I would say, I would take it a step further and say there's a very big difference between mentorship and sponsorship. Mentors are great. Mentors are people who give you advice. But sponsors are those people who will go out of their way to use their relationship capital, to use their political capital and their clout to fight for you when you are not in that room. And that is powerful. And I've had some incredible sponsors. I've been very lucky who have changed the trajectory of my life and my career by advocating for me and pounding on the tables when I have not been there. And so I would say, you know, take the time. If you're in a position of power, take the time, go out of your way, sponsor someone, and sponsor someone who has had a different lived experience than you, right? And I swear, I promise you, it will have a huge difference for you and for the sponsor. So, you know, challenge yourself to do that.
Yeah, I think it's just like so relevant what you're saying, that sponsorship and people who talk to you about you when you're not there, right? And it usually is because you know those people through mentoring, right? Your mentors become your sponsors, but completely agree. Thank you for sharing that. So, you know, Summer, I'm excited for you, right? Your co-op, you kind of get a glimpse of, you know, what a career could look like. So I'm curious, what are your hopes for the coming years? And more specifically, what support do you think you're gonna need? Like, you know, what advice or what would you ask organization or corporation that's gonna have the pleasure to have you work for them?
Yeah, thanks so much. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm really at this point where I'm just excited to keep learning and hopefully having new experiences and aspects of computer science that I don't have as much experience in yet. In kind of the shorter term, I'm really interested in looking at the combination of music and machine learning, or just music and computational thinking in general, to see how the two can augment one another. And in the longer term, something I would like to do in my lifetime is to start or join a gap year program, or maybe like a high school summer program, to support young people to gain technical experience, outdoor education, and then some element of the arts woven into that as well. And yeah, kind of retouching this point of opportunities for people to rewrite their narratives. I think that's such a big transitional point in life for a lot of people, and maybe that vision will change, but that's one of my long-term visions that it's kind of always like on the back burner, cooking a little bit. And I think what I need in support of where I'm going is there's this idea of mentorship and sponsorship. I really appreciate just being able to speak frankly with people about where I'm at in my career, where I'm at with the subject matter, what I think about the environment and community that I'm in, just being able to speak really frankly and honestly without without focusing too much on needing to measure my words or come off a certain way. And I really have found that here at Northeastern, there's a lot of really authentic mentorship where I'm actually able to do that. So I feel like I'm actually positioned quite well with most of the support that I need at this point in time. And then I guess I would just also say, it does help to be in a team environment where there is that type of dynamic as well. So I think, you know, whatever organization I go on to work for next, I'm really looking forward to and hoping to find a team and a team leader where there is just that really transparent environment and a strong sense of community, and kind of this focus on the potential of a team as being greater than the sum of its parts, and this idea that what we can do together is so much more powerful than what we can do alone as individuals. So those are kind of the spaces that I'm looking for, trying to step into as I'm moving forward in my career.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So Bethany, I want to start wrapping up the conversation by building on the idea of support, and maybe also looking at the other side of the fence, which is thinking about our male colleagues and how, how do we think they can become better allies to women and support equality in the workplace, and how do we address that in higher education specifically? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the stuff that both Summer and Elisa have said around sponsorship and holding space, I think that oftentimes there's not an awareness. I don't think as much malice as it is a lack of awareness, because it's just the way things have been done. What we consider as professional or leadership qualities or some of those other things are very gender-based. And so I think awareness is a really big part. And then when you recognize something that's being done, where a voice isn't being heard or a space isn't actually as safe, being able to learn that and hold that space. And so it's a bit of a combination of what the two of them said, where where if you were able to have that trust and that safe space with somebody on your team, where you can go to and be an ally, and then when you do have the power, when you do have the privilege to be able to make that space, to hold the door open for somebody else to say, hey, so and so hasn't said anything yet, or trying to play, recognize, well, why wasn't so and so invited into this, or it's a silly one, but one of the ones that has really meant a lot is when somebody speaks up and is like, well, why don't you take notes, right? A common thing is the women in a meeting are expected to take notes, even if it's not their role. And so I've seen men step up and just say, no, that's not recognizing when gendered actions are being taken, and just stepping up and just pushing against it. That's been extremely helpful, and really gives, it both creates that space so that the women can make their mark, but also it lets you know, okay, you understand, I have somebody that is here. And so then I feel a little bit more empowered, and I feel a little bit more comfortable speaking, because I know it's not a bunch of people in the room that I have to go, and I have to, there are people here that are behind me and that value what I have to say. And so then it gives me more strength. So I think those sorts of actions can really help.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Any other thoughts, maybe, or Elisa, maybe, do you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to take this moment and recognize that the pandemic has disproportionately impacted women, especially women of color. Women are managing things at home. Women are managing things at work. Women are dealing with a lot of silent burdens, but the reality is they're also leaving the workforce quicker than men. And so, like I said earlier, we need the full talent pool. We are living in a complex world right now, and it's not acceptable for women to be leaving the workforce. And so, what men, the reality is also men in most organizations are at the top, right? So I would say two things for men: listen and act. So pay attention. If you see someone who you think is struggling, even if you don't think they're struggling, practice empathy. You know, take them aside, have a conversation, recognize that you have the power to change structures, to offer flexibility, to advocate for someone. Something very small, like offering, a work from home arrangement, or mentoring someone, or giving someone a chance on something, that can make a huge difference in a woman's life or a person's life. So, use your power for good. And then I would say act. And I think, exactly what Bethany said, it's, change doesn't always have to be big, sweeping, systemic changes. It can be small little acts can lead to really big, powerful changes. So, recognize the microaggressions that may be around you, call them out, recognize your own biases, call them out. And so again, like just recognize the power that you have in the role that you have, and use those moments to just make little small changes. And sometimes those changes can make a huge difference.
Yeah, small step, big impact. I completely I'm with you, with both of you. And I think every decision counts, right? And men who are in power have that responsibility as well to on a decision they make, to promote or appoint, to really make sure that they have checked the diversity of their pipelines. And that doesn't come so often. So I think there's a lot of things that they can do to be working towards a more inclusive and equal organization. So, we're wrapping up where we wrapped up officially yesterday, the Women's History Month. So it's kind of a nice, additional day. But, what would be your call to action to #break the bias? Summer, maybe you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. And this is a little bit of a continuation on the answers to the previous question. But I think just talking about some of these ideas and spaces that are not only women is really important. And I feel just so grateful and so lucky that that I am able to have conversations like this with my classmates, and in my particular group of friends that I spend time with through school. They are mostly men, and I feel really excited that it does seem like they're genuinely interested in having these conversations and in deconstructing their own biases and prejudices, and I am as well, right? As a privileged white woman, I do have these blind spots, and sometimes my male colleagues are also able to help me see those. And yeah, I just think being willing to talk about it more and more, and almost like not taking it personally. Like if I notice that I have a blind spot, to acknowledge it, do what I need to do to adjust it, or fix it, or change it, maybe educate myself more, and then move past it, and just continuing to have these conversations. And I feel so grateful that I'm in a community where I do feel like I'm able to have those conversations with my peers.
Yeah. Awesome. Bethany?
I think I would say recognizing your privilege, right? So I know that everybody has different experiences, and really recognize the different experiences that you've had, and knowing what opportunities you had, and really being, I think it goes to that empathy point, but recognizing, okay, not everybody has had these same experiences. And so where can I look, what sort of things am I assuming? When we're judging people, we're assuming things, and we're oftentimes, especially in academia, inflexible, because there's these barriers of, well, I got here, and I think just checking that and saying, well, I also had X, Y, and Z privilege, right? And I think being able to say, well, why do I assume this person isn't as qualified, or that person, or why did I automatically call on this person and not that person? And just checking that and being like, okay, this is something that was built into the system that's maybe broken. And I think that's actually one of the exciting things that I like about working with Northeastern, is that they're okay if we break things. They're okay if we say, you know, this is a system that's been in place for a while, but there's something wrong with it, and we can question it and we can rebuild it to be more inclusive. And so I think really looking at and evaluating those systems so that we don't keep more people out, and we're able to open that up and say, how do we make sure, or even just looking around and saying, what does this room look like? Is it a diverse room? Do people feel like everybody has a voice? And then saying, what can I do to make this space more inclusive and make somebody else feel like they belong here?
Right. Thank you. What about you, Elisa?
I think I've always answered your questions with 2 parts, so I'll stick to that. So I'll do 2 things. The first thing I'll do is I'll pause and, you know, acknowledge my own privilege and recognize my own biases. You know, one thing we didn't talk about today, but I want to acknowledge that yesterday was International Transgender Day of Visibility. And so I personally, I will acknowledge I am not educated on transgender women. And you know, when we talk about women, it's inclusive of all humans who identify as female from all backgrounds and walks of life. And I am privileged in that I don't have to go through some of the challenges that transgender women have to go through. And so I pause and I recognize my bias and take it upon myself to educate myself as best I can about some other women from other walks of life. So that's the first thing I'll do. The second thing I'll do is, it's very simple. And I think it's something that every single person on this call can do, is I'll go out of my way for someone. I'll take an extra moment, and I'll do this for a woman. And maybe it's a more junior woman in the organization. I'll say, are you okay? How can I help? How are you doing? Can we grab a coffee? You know, it's so easy to get wrapped in our busy days, but sometimes we don't take the time to have that human connection. And so I'm going to go out of my way for someone, and I'll challenge everyone on this call to do the same.
Oh, that's awesome. Small acts of kindness being impact, for sure. Well, I would like to thank our panelists for their tremendous insights. That conversation was personally very eye-opening to me and gave me a lot of hope. Women are making tremendous strides in the workplace, and there is still a lot to accomplish. And under your leadership, I think I saw in the chat someone saying that they feel so hopeful with seeing women like you on this panel and confident for the change. So we're in good hands, if I'm not mistaken. I want to thank you once again, Bethany, Elisa, and Summer, for just being, you know, so authentic and open and eager to share your experiences and your thoughts with the audience, and for allowing me to be the moderator today. And I'll pass the baton back to Adrienne. Thank you.